Hi, this is Dr. Victoria Nalule. I'm the CEO of Nalule Energy and Minerals Consultancy. In brief, it's called NEM Energy. So NEM Energy, it's a consulting firm. We do lots of work with respect to oil, gas, the energy transition, climate change, renewable energy, and critical minerals. So you can involve us in tailored research. You can involve us in executive trainings and all other aspects with respect to the energy and mining sector. So today, I want to answer the question that was asked: what does the energy progression mean? Energy progression, that is a concept that I introduced in 2020 in our book that is focused on energy transitions and the future of the African energy sector, law, policy and governance. So in this book, when you look at chapter 1, it introduces the energy progression concept. And the energy progression concept was introduced in 2020, the year when everyone thought we are ready to say goodbye to fossil fuels. So in 2020, in 2019, obviously you are aware of what was happening with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic, the impacts of the pandemic on our economies, politically. It also affected the energy sector because for the first time, with so many oil and gas companies going into bankruptcy. So that's the time where we thought we no longer need oil and gas. And now I've already talked about the energy transition and what it entails. This has been an ongoing concept or issue or initiative to ensure that countries shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy. And as a result of this energy transition, we saw many initiatives aimed at cutting funding for fossil fuels, which is understandable because at the end of the day, you need to address climate change. We're seeing that climate change impacts everywhere and we need to address climate change. But however, the negativity that came with the energy transition is failing to understand the realities of the energy sector. And that's why I introduced the concept of energy progression. And what are these realities of the energy sector? The first thing is the progressive nature of energy use. You cannot have a wholesome transition. With energy resources, we need to progress from one energy use to another. And why is it energy progression? Because if I'm using firewood right now, it doesn't mean that I don't want to use electricity or gas for cooking. It simply means that's what I can afford. Or even if I could afford the electricity, it means that I don't have access to that electricity. It means that the infrastructure is not there, or it means that whatever modern energy I'm using, it's not reliable. So I'm starting with the biomass. I'm starting with the progression from traditional energy to modern energy. And we saw that in Europe very well. Because in Europe, if you look at the 18th century, most people were using firewood. Industries were relying on firewood. And at a certain point, firewood was even powering the train stations, the transport sector. But then they progressed. They utilized lots of coal to go through industrialization. They utilized lots of oil and gas to go through industrialization. That shows their progression from one energy use to another. And remember, that's like 17th century, 18th century. Now, right now in Europe, you are seeing the progression. They feel they are at a level where they can afford to let go of certain energy resources, for instance, oil and gas, fossil fuels, because they already attained that industrialization they need. So they would be more focused on exploring other cleaner forms of energy like renewable energy. But however, remember, although we have seen the energy transition initiatives mostly being strong in the developed world, in the global north, in 2023, it has proved impossible, implying that they are also still progressing from one energy use to another. For instance, just this month, last week, August 2023, we saw the Prime Minister of the UK putting more emphasis on the country's need to develop its oil and gas resources. This is the UK in 2023. So why are you still focused on oil and gas if you want to transition from fossil fuels to renewables? Implying that they're understanding the essence of the progressive nature of energy use. However much we want to address climate change, however much we have accepted that these fossil fuels contribute, they contribute over 60% of the greenhouse gas emissions, you cannot jump from fossil fuels to renewables without being prepared. So the direction that we are seeing in the global north, in the developed countries, it shows the progressive nature of energy use. And why is this important to understand? Because for the developing countries that are already facing various energy challenges, they have to take this into consideration when they are making the decisions, when they're making the energy policies, when they're formulating the oil and gas laws, when they're formulating their energy laws. They have to take the progressive nature of energy use into consideration. You can't wake up and say we are banning the use of firewood. You can't wake up and say we are banning the use of charcoal. You have to make those decisions with an alternative, a cheaper alternative. If people are not going to utilize firewood, charcoal, or even oil and gas, are the renewables accessible? Are they affordable? Can they do all the social work? And it's not only about the social work, the economic work. Can they power the industrialization? So you need to think about all that. So with the energy progression dialogue, we take into consideration the progressive nature of energy use, and we understand that you cannot jump from one energy use to another. You need to progressively make the finances available and make alternative energy cheaper and affordable so that people can progress from one energy use to another. So energy progression, in summary, means that let's progressively move from one energy use to another. And as you're making that progression, the finances should be made available for the countries that feel that they still need to progress smoothly. Support should be made available. What kind of support? Capacity building, the technology, and also the financial support should be made available. So what we're seeing at the international level, whereby a certain group of people, I'll just call them people because they hide under institutions, a certain group of people, they hide under these big institutions and they make decisions for everyone. Those force people that, okay, it's time for you to transition from fossil fuels to renewables. But have you gone on the ground to see what the reality is? And you understand why it has been hard for people to make that shift? And what suggestions or what recommendations are you putting in place to ensure that people progress or transition smoothly? So we should stop this idea of a few people coming up with concepts and forcing these concepts on different countries that you need to do this, you need to do this. No. Each country has different energy challenges, so they should progress at their level, they should progress at their rate, they shouldn't be bullied by anyone. But however, as you're progressing, you have to take into consideration the need to protect the environment. You need to employ the best technologies possible to ensure that you utilize whatever resources you're utilizing with the fossil fuels in a sustainable manner. And also for countries that are still relying on fossil fuels, you have to ensure that part of the revenue from the fossil fuels or from the extractive industries is used to finance the energy transition or to finance the energy progression so that you can invest more in cleaner forms of energy. So with energy progression, we have to take into consideration the realities of the energy sector, the differences in societies, the differences in countries, and the various challenges that countries face that are making it hard for them to embrace a wholesome energy transition. So 2023, the 21st century, it's for energy progression. Otherwise, if you rush, you've seen what has happened in the UK, in Germany, they went back to using coal. If they had really transitioned, they wouldn't be going to coal. But the fact that they are still using coal, they understand the progressive nature of energy use. You cannot force an energy transition. You can only progress. Thank you very much.